Behind him was a group of 5 or 6 tall men. One smirked and said, "Oh ho, dear senior brother, we're sorry about that." Another, sitting next to him, crossed his arms and laughed. "It was just a slip. Why are you so tense?" At this time, Jin Tae-kyung was very angry. His face was red, but he tried to calm down. He thought silently, "Okay, stay calm. Be rational and avoid trouble here." After thinking, he spoke up. "There's an old saying, even a dog knows not to bother someone when they're eating. So, if you have any brains, apologize and order more food right now." Jin Tae-kyung couldn't finish his sentence. One of the troublemakers walked over slowly. As he walked, he laughed. "Oh ho, look at this guy with the sharp tongue." Jin Tae-kyung closed his eyes and held back his anger. He said, "I was thinking about letting it go once." But before he could finish, the guy pressed his face close to Jin Tae-kyung. He stuck out his tongue and teased, "Hey kid, stick out your tongue. I'll pull it out." As soon as those words ended, Jin Tae-kyung couldn't take it anymore. He raised his fist and punched the guy straight in the chin. The punch was very strong. It knocked the thug to the floor right away. Jin Tae-kyung stood up, rubbed his nose, and said, "Damn it, his mouth stinks. Brush your teeth and rinse your mouth." From behind, Hook saw this and was very scared. He stood up. They cried out at the same time, "He attacked first, that bastard." This group saw their man beaten and got very angry. They shouted, "Kill him," and rushed forward together. Upstairs in a room, a woman held a pipe and smoked. Hearing the noise below, she said, "It's really noisy." A person outside the door reported right away, 6 people from the Crimson Wind clan are fighting with someone. The woman asked curiously, "Who is that?" The person hesitated, then answered, "That person is the sleeping dragon of Shangxi." As soon as this name was said, the woman in the room said, "Oh my god." She burst out laughing. "That's a name I've heard before." The candlelight in the room gave a warm glow. After a moment, she said, "It's been a long time since we last saw each other." Outside, the Crimson Wind clan's Guangsu was beaten flat on the ground. Jin Tae-kyung looked at the remaining guys. He thought, these guys are probably killers. That's why they pulled out weapons so fast, and their bodies smell faintly of blood. Frowning, he asked, "What the hell do you want?" The group of scary-faced bandits smirked and shouted, "We're the Reapers who will send you to the afterlife." After saying that, they slashed at Jin Tae-kyung. He leaned to the side to dodge and said quietly, "Oh ho, is that so?" Then Jin Tae-kyung spread his hands. His hands moved a few times. In a blink, he took the weapons from the 2 closest men. He slapped their faces, and soon they lay on the ground, unable to move. The rest of the bandits roared in anger. "This brat!" They pulled out their swords and slashed at Jin Tae-kyung. He easily dodged. He frowned and thought, these guys have some martial arts skills. The fight didn't stop. The bandits kept rushing, but before they could hit him, Jin Tae-kyung slashed with his hand. Blood splattered. Another guy saw this and cried out in fear. In one blow, he beat the leader. He got scared. Seeing Jin Tae-kyung walk toward him slowly, he waved his hands and begged, "Young master, forgive our disrespect. I apologize sincerely and promise good compensation." Hearing that, Jin Tae-kyung didn't move. He said boldly, "It's too late." Before the guy could react, Hook appeared behind him with a wooden chair. The chair crashed down, making a huge noise. He gathered the 6 bandits in one spot. Looking at the tattoos on their bodies, Hook said suspiciously, "Young master, look at this. It looks like a horse tattoo." Jin Tae-kyung stood still, watching the tattoo for a while. He stroked his chin and thought, these guys aren't just simple thugs. They belong to some group. They mentioned a leader, so probably a sect. Then he said, "Nah, it's not a horse. It's horse bandits." But upstairs, through the railing, a woman watched and said, "In this northern plateau, there are dozens of horse bandit groups. They have about 2,000 people." Hearing her voice, Jin Tae-kyung looked up carefully. Jin Moo-kyung and Hook paused too. On the second floor railing, Hwa smiled and greeted, "Long time no see, my lord." Hwa poured warm tea into a cup. Jin Tae-kyung and Hwa sat together in a private room. Hwa smiled slightly and asked, "Are you on your way to the Mount Hwa Sword sect?" Jin Tae-kyung nodded. "Yes." Hearing that, Hwa said, "Can you tell me why you're going there?" Jin Tae-kyung didn't say yes or no. He asked back, "Shan's biggest source of information is here. Don't you know everything?" Hwa coughed a few times, pretending to be sad. "I want you to say it yourself. My feelings are hurt." Jin Tae-kyung sighed. He crossed his arms, leaned back in the chair, frowned, and said, "I keep my business and personal affairs separate." Hearing that, Hwa raised a finger. Her eyes sparkled. "Really? I have a proposal. Think of it as a deal." Jin Tae-kyung was a little curious. "Say it. I'll listen, then decide." Hwa moved her plump lips a few times. Then she narrowed her eyes and said, "Take me with you to the Mount Hwa Sword sect." Hearing that, Jin Tae-kyung stood up in surprise. "What are you going there for?" Hwa shrugged. "That can't be said. I'm someone who separates public and private matters." After a pause, she smiled. "Just kidding. I need to pick up something from the Mount Hwa Sword sect, so I'll go with you." Hearing this, Jin Tae-kyung suddenly remembered what Hwa once said, half of the stores and goods were owned by the Mount Hwa Sword sect. He was very surprised and widened his eyes. At this time, Hwa picked up the pipe next to her. "I'm sure you know this, but we're in a tough spot now. We won the last war, but because of the truth about the Elder's plan, we couldn't get our reward. Hearing that, Jin Tae-kyung got wary. If the Manhwa sword sect accepts the merger, do we have to pay compensation? Hwa leaned back and blew out smoke. She said slowly, that would only happen if the Jin family of Taiyuan lost. I got a real estate transfer as promised. But isn't it best to meet in person and talk directly? Hearing her, Jin Tae-kyung thought, the Manhwa sword sect, which rules the northern regions with an iron fist, is falling apart now. That's why Hwa wants to use this chance to grow her sex power in the north of Shan. And I bet Jin Wang wants the Jin family of Taiyuan to own all of Shan. So, yesterday's friend is now a rival. Seeing Jin Tae-kyung still hesitant, Hwa said, then I'll go with our cute young master to greet the Manhwa sword sect. How about it? Without thinking much, Jin Tae-kyung shook his head. I refuse. Hwa was surprised and jumped up. Isn't that cruel? You cut me off without negotiating. Jin Tae-kyung said seriously, we are no longer allies in this. As soon as he said that, Hwa's eyes turned cold. She put the pipe on the table and said calmly, so be it. Hearing that, Jin Tae-kyung said nothing more. He thought, I expected her to push more, but she gave up just like that. So he stood up and left. Seeing that, Hwa quickly asked, I heard you plan to stay at the mansion tonight. Jin Tae-kyung nodded. Yes, why? Hwa smiled. Can you pass a message to your second brother? Those 5 ancient pine trees in the backyard are expensive, so practice carefully. As soon as she said that, Jin Tae-kyung was curious but didn't ask. He just nodded. Hwa said softly, if you need anything, just say it. You're the cute young master, so I'll help with all your requests. Returning to his residence, Jin Tae-kyung was shocked and sweating at the sight. The sound of a sword being sheathed was sharp in the yard. In the backyard, 5 ancient pine trees were cut down. Jin Moo-kyung said quietly, I just finished cutting a few trees. As he spoke, Jin Tae-kyung and Hook behind him were both scared. The moon hung high in the night sky. An owl on a tree branch made a few eerie calls. The next day, because Jin Tae-kyung group couldn't pay for those 5 pine trees, Beiled would join them to the Mount Hua sword sect. On the carriage leaving the city, Jin Moo-kyung said angrily, how could he bring a woman on this trip? Sitting next to him, Jin Tae-kyung, full of resentment, asked, who cut down those 5 pine trees? Hwa sat to the side, not minding their words. She smiled softly and said, I'll be in your care. Young Master Jin sat in the carriage.